I feel like, I don't know, I always feel like I owe South Ferriby a bit of an apology. This whole project with, well, initially it was all advertised as being in Yorkshire.
Right.
And this is the sort of odd one out in North Lincolnshire. Is it really I've not had much experience of, but you seem to know it quite well.
Well, yeah, I've been here a long time, 40 years, so I do know and like the area.
Yeah.
Love the area.
Because you did that, the sort of poetry book on this area and region.
This little book I have to have in my pocket.
Oh, you got it in, you brought it with you.
Well, these are
Can tell you know, a poet.
Well, it's not really, I wouldn't describe it as a poetry book. It's only got about 4 or 5 poems in it. But it does have poems about this area, which is why I put them together in the book. It's a kind of, obviously a memento, but it's also a kind of thank you to the area. As you know, we have quite a thriving sort of cultural scene around here.
You seem to have been quite active putting events on and nights on. And
we had a little group of, I suppose, creative people that we just started for fun. Well, we just put a show on in a small venue in the nearest town, which would be Barton.
Yeah.
Mixture
Yeah.
of music, poems, storytelling, a few jokes, you know. And people really liked it. And so we started off this is our 3rd year, and we thought we'd do a couple. And any money raised would go to charities.
Yeah.
And now we've done about 12 or so.
Why do you give the money to charity?
What a good question. That's a very good question. I think I'll stop that idea. Give it to us.
Well, it's, you know, sort of interesting, really. You know.
Partly because we felt then we don't need the money.
Well, and I guess it's goodwill for everyone.
It's good. People then think, well, why not? It's all in a good cause. The fact that it's fairly small amounts of money also mean that, you know, nobody's going to get upset one way or the other if we don't sell a few seats and we sell a few more. Or,
well, they can't complain as well.
Yeah, and we don't have to pay for the venue. So if we did, we'd have to look at it in a more sort of business-like way, if you like.
It might take the fun out of it.
Yeah,
because a lot of the poetry you've done has been sort of for children as well, you know.
That's where I discovered if I was going to make any money out of writing.
That was the market.
That was it. Because like a lot of writers, I suppose I started off being very serious. Actually, that's not quite true. I went through a very serious phase, as you do, in the sort of sixth form and university.
It's always that age.
Yeah, yes, it's a lot of angst-ridden poetry. But before that, I started writing really bad doggerel about all my teachers.
So you were slagging off your teachers early on?
Very early on, yes.
Destined to then become a teacher yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I knew what it was like from both sides. That's why I could never quite take the teaching profession entirely seriously. Went through my serious phase. And then when I started teaching English, I started to enjoy writing for pupils or about them sometimes. Little plays, little stories, little poems.
So you went from, as a student, writing about your teachers to a teacher writing about your students?
Exactly, yeah. I remember one pupil said to me, as I was halfway through doing this little play, and he said, "Did you write this, sir?" Because there was just, maybe one too many references. I then discovered that writing poems for lower secondary school was working, and I got a publisher interested, and we
went through with that.
Published that book, which was called "Warning: Too Much Schooling Can Damage Your Health." You see, so it still had that kind of
I don't think you're
that edge
pulling
to
your
it.
punches.
Because I was well aware that there's always a lot good and a lot wrong with education at the same time. As that developed, and I sort of became a writer, because other people start calling you a writer.
Right.
Then after a while, you think, well, we're all right then. And the market started getting younger. Well, not the market was always there. I was getting asked to write for younger and younger audiences, which was at that time was a new thing for me. You then start having to think about how you would write for 5-year-olds. Yes, I did get to the stage where I enjoyed writing and working with primary pupils more, because it just seemed it was just freer. The older the students, the more concerned they are about getting it right. Because they lack confidence, I suppose. I mean, and adults are even worse. Yeah, right. People do. Well, myself, I've written, I suppose, therapeutically to work through difficult life situations. But it's not.
It's having that outlet. Yeah.
Everything you do doesn't have to be for an audience.
Yeah, it's for yourself.
Yeah. So I've done. Well, as you know from the little book, done bits of drawing and painting, but I wouldn't expect necessarily to have an audience for it.
Yeah, and that feels like something that I've maybe lost. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the work I've been doing the last few years, is for an audience. I don't really have a sense of stuff that I just do for myself anymore.
So what would you do?
I don't know. That's the thing. I mean, at the minute I'm going around talking to people and hoping they'll figure it out for me.
Right, hoping that's going to be your therapy. Yeah, well, tell me about it.
Yeah. I guess when you're talking about the sort of freedom that comes with it, whether that's writing for children or doing these events where it's more just for the fun of it. I mean,
yeah, well, it's good to be able to do it for the fun of it.
I think that's really important.
You get something out of it besides fun. Like when I'm working with Graham or Des, we will do things together which we wouldn't necessarily do if we were just writing or working on our own.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm doing something next week with Des, and we're going to do some recording. The story of our famous John Harrison from Barrow, from the Ballad of John Harrison.
The Ballad of John Harrison?
The Ballad of John Harrison.
Oh, right, are you?
Always prepared.
John Harrison, he invented the, what is it, chronometer?
The marine chronometer, yes.
I learned that in the Waterways Museum, I believe.
Excellent. He was the man who famously discovered longitude, or discovered a way of measuring it at sea. And he came from Barrow, spent the first 40 years of his life.
And that's there. Just down the road from here.
Yeah, just the other side of Barton. But also
sort of transformed the history of the world, I guess.
Well, navigation, certainly. The chronometer that he ended up with finally became the basis of all the marine chronometers in all the ships in all the world until GPS came along, really.
Yeah, and replaced it.
Yeah. One of my other little projects to raise money for the charter for Woodlands.
More charity fundraising.
Yes, in collaboration with the Woodland Trust, which I'm a long-time member of. I'm writing sonnets, sonnet a month. So we're into May now. I started in February, so I've just sent out the 4th sonnet. The point I was going to make was a question you raised. How long does it take to write a sonnet? Well, the thinking can take quite a long time. You can't wait for inspiration.
You don't have that luxury to sort of ponder, I guess.
And the same way it is in schools, where you ask children to write and they've got to get it done by
this, or in an hour in an exam or something.
Yeah.
Yes, there's the craft of actually being able to do that thing, but really it's just thinking. I mean, you've got to get the ideas. It's
that mixture, isn't it, of being able to do it. You've got to learn a few techniques,
right?
And what works.
Yeah, I could.
What kind of bench to sit on?
Definitely still learning. I know my benches.
He's done
just don't know whether. That's the.
He's done bench research. He's got the benchmarks.
Yeah.
And he's got benchmarks on his bottom now. So that. How do we get onto that? Anyway, yes, it's a mixture of the craft and the art.
No, I mean, I think that's why I prefer the art bit, because I'm not good at the crafting bit.
What we're doing here today depends a good deal
on the crafting.
Yeah, but you've got to have had the idea, and you've got to be able to bring that into fruition.
Maybe what I was starting to get a bit dissatisfied with working as an artist was the lack of risk. Because, everything's sort of done in advance. I don't know, it just felt sort of safe or routine, and I think trying to produce things where you don't quite know what you're going to end up with, what will turn out from talking to people or these things, at the very least felt a bit more exciting. If you take the risk and it doesn't work out, you learn something.
You still learn, that's right, and you've still got to, you've got to care. And there's a certain amount particularly in visual arts, I think, where the idea of it being risky or challenging takes over from the fact of it being anything else.
Just to shock people.
Challenging. Well, I've been shocked now for the last, 100 years or so. So
Right.
actually, it's a bit,
Had enough shock.
it's a bit boring, really.
Well, you get desensitized.
Yeah, you
I mean,
think, oh yeah, right.
I mean, I always feel like the worst reaction you can get is an eye roll, you know, particularly with art. It's like if people's eyes are rolling, it's not going in, you know, so it's, I think trying to, be a bit more gentle with things.
Kind of get people on side then, you know, you don't want to shout at them. No, like to be shouted at. And then you form in the visual or film, writing or whatever.
If you put too much energy or shock or whatnot, you lose this. Maybe you lose the chance to allow people to question,
to reflect,
to think
and because if you're shocked too much, you just react against it.
Well, one thing I was quite interested in your longer list of things you've been involved in was working with Stuart Hall.
Well, yeah, I was again kind of lucky to be in certain places at certain times because I did history as a first degree, and I got interested in mass media. It was one of the first PhD students at the Centre for Contemporary Cultural Studies, which Stuart Hall and Richard Hoggart were running and only recently set up. And so I did my research, much to many people's amusement, on the visual communication in advertising in women's magazines. So I was interested in how messages were communicated visually rather than in the text. Because I was just really interested as a novice, really, I knew nothing about, to try and develop my own way of categorizing all the aspects of visual imagery and what they would, and then applying that to women's magazines to see what they were saying about women, which is not very different, having done little follow-up research 2 or 3 years ago, not very different then to what it is now.
It's not really changed.
It's not really changed. Some changes in technique, that's just due to better colour printing and photography and so on. But the messages about what a woman should be seem to me to be very, very similar. I mean, some changes, and that was also a crucial point in the development of feminism, women's liberation movement, and so on.
At that time,
in Birmingham and the world, kind of thing. I really enjoyed being at the centre with those guys, and Stuart was an absolute inspiration. Always a lovely, lovely man, and very appreciative, or if that's the right word, of the work that I was doing, and the students were doing, so that you felt you're not working for the professor, you felt you're working for a colleague. So yes, those years did inform, again, in odd ways, quite a lot of
what you've done since.
What interested me.
There's an ongoing subversive tone to most things you seem to do.
Yes, it's funny that, being such a pillar of the community as I am. But yeah, well, there are things that need, the mickey taking out of them. And even in the poems for children, I quite often wanted them to, or the teachers who were reading them maybe with the children, just to think a bit about what they were doing, a bit about tests and exams and things like that, and the fact that, was this really what life was about.
Yeah. What is life about? I don't know. Is that a big question?
Well, I got a sonnet for you on that. Oh. So I did one about a banker, a banker there was, and that a worthy man, which goes on to say how wealthy he was and how many Porsches he did drive, but ended up with making the point, well, what worth was this man if actually he didn't actually make anything?
What the bankers make other than money for themselves.
They just move things around, don't they?
Yeah.
You think?
It seems like you've never stopped writing or doing things or putting things out, and is that a big motivation?
Life would be boring otherwise, wouldn't it? I mean, what do you want to do? Do you want to sit in your cardigan and put your slippers on? You don't, do you?
No. I only recently got some slippers, and it's I've had cold feet all my life. What's that playing at?
You want to be producing, just doing something worthwhile, even in a very small way.
The satisfaction of achieving and making something.
That's how I think, particularly people who retire without anything like that do feel a bit, well, what's this all about then? Well, let's do something useful.
Yeah, you need to feel like you still got a use.
Feel like you're still alive, You're just sitting there waiting for the pearly gates to open for you. I don't see myself as being particularly unusual.
In that way, yeah. No, it's not uncommon.
I think that must be true of majority of people. I know you're doing this for work. I'm doing it for fun, believe it or not.
I'd like to think it's fun.
But just being and talking to people, in itself, I think is something worth doing. Having a chat, having a conversation.
Yes.
It's still part of what makes you human, being alive. Being worth getting up in the morning, kind of thing.
No, totally.
So, creativity takes a lot of different forms.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
then on to the next project after that. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But there'll be one.
Yeah. Oh, great. No, it's been a fun morning. I think we're just about to get rained off.
Yeah.